operatives. It's obviously a handbag.
But this was a security license continues to be the director of Scouse Festivals. This is a
Hi everyone, Mike and Jason again with this week's episode of No Risk, the Australian program for security risk analysts and security risk managers, corporate governance and compliance professionals. That's a mouthful to say on a Tuesday afternoon. Hi Jason, how are you going, mate?
Really good, Mike, really good. How are you, mate? Are you staying dry up there in southeast Queensland?
Yeah, I couldn't get the drone out all weekend. It was so wet, mate. So I was really disappointed. I went a bit rusty. The golf course is flooded behind me and nobody's on the golf course walking their dogs or anything. It's gumboot weather at the moment. So I hope it's dry down your way. We're going live to 7,000 people as we speak right now. They're not all watching at the moment, but that's our network. Very soon we're going to be on LinkedIn, and that's going to add another 7,000 people to our viewing capacity. So nothing to be nervous about, Jason. Only 14,000 people out there that I'm going to embarrass myself in front of by hitting the wrong button in a minute or something like that. So
that's all right, mate. Me too.
And where have you been? Have you been travelling much this week, mate? What's been happening?
This week's been busy. Where have I been? I think when we last spoke, I was going down to train some security guards down in Wollongong. I'd been down there. And then, this week's been one of those weeks catching up on paperwork. I think I might have told you before that, a lot of my client base, Melbourne Cup Day used to be the cutoff day. And I knew that, everything was done up until Melbourne Cup Day, and then it was just hold your breath and hope that everything went okay and we would talk to you again in February. Well, that's not the case this year. It's a different year. Obviously, COVID has played a role in people understanding that things are changing so frequently now that you're not only managing months at the moment, you're also managing days and you're also managing weeks. So, there's quite a bit of that. And I'm working with my clients on that. There's a bit more awareness going on as far as compliance goes on throughout not only the gaming industry of where I predominantly consult to, but also more broadly across corporate Australia too. I think everyone wants to get their ducks in a row as far as compliance goes at the moment. Just because there's just so much activity happening with the regulator. And I know shortly you're going to introduce one of those matters. But, the regulators are active. So it's very, very important that people have their compliance programs in tow at the moment. Look, I'm really hopeful that 2021 is going to be a great year for everyone because this one's been extremely difficult for everyone to navigate.
It has been. And only this week, Jason, in the family events agenda around Australia, that whole landscape changed where a man was shot by a sniper in Western Australia, which means now people managing those kind of family events at the access point are going to be looking at who's coming in, whether they've got neck tattoos, whether they've got face tattoos. There's a whole range of things that are going to exclude people now as a result of that one incident in Perth that weren't on the agenda a week ago, but are now firmly on the agenda, because if you want to get mum and dad and the kids along to the family burnout event that they were having there, and it's unsafe, they're not going to go. And the regulator is not going to let you have that event if you are going to allow people in there that are going to attract unwanted attention from firearms users who've got a grudge or an axe to grind with them. So that whole agenda has changed. And I've heard you speak earlier this year about how rapidly it changes and how quickly it changes. That's a new one that is now firmly there. That was something once limited to nightclubs, but now it's kind of events as well.
That whole active shooter scenario, whilst it's a little unique to the Australian culture, this type of thing happening, you can be guaranteed in most Western worlds, this is a risk that is considered by modern risk managers throughout the world. And I think it's certainly something that we need to be aware of. We need to take a little bit more notice of, because I think that particularly large events where large quantities of people are going to be congregating, we need to take into consideration some of this stuff and have a plan. I'm not saying have a plan to intercept a bullet mid-air or anything like that, but have a plan about how you're going to respond, because it's always important.
Yeah, well, this one caused no panic because they just thought it was a car backfiring. It was done from a distance away. The person who did it didn't have to walk up and get in close, and that person knew how to sight a target. So that's one just a little bit off the scale. As a security guard a long, long time ago, it was 3-time nightly event. The people were going to go and get a gun and come back and shoot me. They never did. Every single one of them had a bedroom full of guns back in those days, but they never ever did. Now you've got a situation where there are people who are prepared to do that. So that was a rough one. Yeah. But yes, when you mentioned the regulator is active, I could fill up this show, all 30 minutes of it, with just job vacancies for governance and compliance to comply with regulations and compliance. And we'll see that at the end of the show when I actually put those job vacancies up. There are so many, I cannot get them all up. So the opportunities for people who, have risk management qualifications and experience are enormous in the environment we're living in. So a couple of things that have happened this week that have been of interest. This one's been going on for such a long time now. The Crown shareholders in Crown Resorts, they're up in arms and they're threatening legal action against Crown in relation to many different things. They're not happy. Crown's had major problems over the last couple of years, and it goes back to where 16 or 17 of their people in China were actually arrested. Now, if you are the security risk manager for Crown, you have to go over to China and get those people out of jail. They're your employees. And they did. And they hired a security risk management firm from Australia to do it. And they were successful at it. Now, they were successful at getting them released. Now, none of the people were happy, but they were released. But it was something that they went through. China has different rules. If you're going to open up casinos in China and promote them in China where they are not legal, you've got to have to play by their games. And
well, also, I would just say, Mike, I would certainly wouldn't want to be an international company at the moment trying to negotiate the release of people that have done the wrong thing in China. When those releases did happen, it was quite a different relationship we had with China at the time. So, look, that's certainly a big risk.
That's right. If you're going to go into another country, you play by their rules, and they have their rules. Our rules don't matter. So Pinkertons were the security risk management firm involved in negotiating the release of those people some 2 to 3 years ago, and they did a very good job of it. But yes, it would be much more difficult today. So Crown Resorts have been set in the press. They've uncovered catastrophic governance failures and serious issues over their casino license. So risk and governance failures there. So what they were doing were letting in people with criminal records. They were actually marketing to them, coming over here, giving them money to gamble with. So, they were running up debts, and this is what Crown were doing just to get their turnover up. Now, I don't know, the legalities of all that sort of thing and how that works. But it would not be smiled upon if your local club with a few poker machines started giving credit to people to go and gamble. But Crown Casinos seem to have done that, and there is a real mess, and it's put in jeopardy a $2.2 billion third casino that they want to open. So that is a massive issue for Crown to address. As a person who was around and when the Rest Point Casino was established all those years ago in 1973, I was quite familiar with how strict the rules were at the time. And the rules were really strict to keep out the criminal element at the time. Now, that's somewhere along the way, Crown lost. They sort of dropped their guard in relation to that in promoting high roller gamblers from various Asian countries. So Crown.
I would say, Mike, is that the ethical gaming operators out there at the moment are very, very concerned about this type of propaganda. There's been other propaganda too about the role gaming has played in money laundering and criminal activity as well, and they're extremely concerned that it's going to result in further regulation and something that's going to compromise their continuity of business. So, I predominantly deal with the licensed club industry, and I can say that every single dollar that a licensed club makes needs to be returned to the community in one way or another. It is not possible for any individual in that to be rewarded with respect to gaming profit. In fact, senior executives, their remuneration can't be determined on gaming profit. So, like I say, for all the bad activity that's happening, there is some really, really, like I say, ethical managers and supervisors and operators of gaming in Australia. But it's a damn shame these types of things are happening because that negative propaganda, I have no doubt, will end up in further regulation. Regulation is as much a risk commercially for any business, and everyone knows that it's going to certainly compromise their continuity. If it compromises licensed club industry's continuity, it compromises the community as well.
You're absolutely spot on. When I went to business school all those years ago, they told me there are 4 things that influence business, and that is people changing wants, people changing needs, people changing location, and government. And that last one, you thought, how? Back in those days, government moved very, very slowly. Today, they move very quickly, and they will regulate very quickly. And what they have to do for one, they have to do for all. So, yes, it may have those effects. But, again, it will level the playing field if the big ones have to pay fair too. So that is good. So there might be some positive in that. Up in Brisbane this week, you raised it 4 weeks ago, Jason. You said the price of cocaine's going up, the price of methamphetamine's going up. We've had a hairdresser who's been charged with selling cocaine out of 3 of his hairdressing shops, and 27 people have been charged by the police in relation to it. So that's happened just this week. Now, that's drug-related. It's a criminal offence. But what we're trying to push here is, because of the price increase in drugs out there, it raises the awareness of organisations against scams and frauds, where people who are not criminally bent but may have a need to take drugs or get drugs, that sort of, they've got to pay a higher price, so they've got to raise more money than they do from their day job, and some of them may be tempted to do it through fraud or a scam like that. I was doing some research the other day, and you can buy ransomware on the internet now. Not on the dark web. People will sell you ransomware now. I don't know if it works. What if it's no use ringing up the police saying, "Look, I bought this ransomware and it doesn't work. I've been ripped off." But there's a lot of that. Those issues are going to be related to the increasing price of drugs in the community. So that was one that came up this week. A big one that's hit the headlines in New South Wales. This lady who used to work for the National Australia Bank, she was paying invoices basically to this lady She could charge what she wanted for the human group for her events or whatever they were. And the lady in the bank who had authority to approve checks up to $20 million was just paying the invoices and receiving kickbacks. Now they've been caught, both of them. This one's going to end up this one's going to go to court in early February, I believe. This one's been in court this week. Now, the big issue here, people, if you rip off a bank, it's a place that has money. As soon as they find out, the day they know, you're put under surveillance instantaneously. Yeah. They know you are straight under surveillance. Now, this isn't by clowns or Keystone cops. This is people watching you. You will not know that you are under surveillance, but your life is going to be monitored, where you go, what you do on Sundays, on Saturday nights, on, not just when during the week, that sort of thing. So she's going to lose a job. She's going to be under surveillance. So is this one. It's what they do, because they do not know that this person isn't going to go to the bank and try and influence ex-employees about what they saw and what they might say. They don't know that. I mean, she has basically got herself into trouble for $5.5 million worth of fraud. She's paid $4 million back. Done well there. That's going to go down well in court, but they just do not know what other activities she might be up to. So that for the protection of their own staff, which is a risk management issue, both of them instantaneously under surveillance from that point onwards.
Mike, I used to when I was in law enforcement, I used to loathe fraud investigations. I actually really, really love them these days, because the technology is so sophisticated. The software platforms for accounting systems, the amount of intelligence that's available in a business through, whether it be their point of sale system, whether it be their accounting system, whether it be their purchasing system, most of it online these days, most of it in the cloud. Like, they're so sophisticated that it's actually not hard to detect fraud compared to what it used to be when we were using spreadsheets and the signing of blank checks. It's way more sophisticated. There normally needs to be, given that the majority of the way in which commerce works in modern businesses these days, it requires electronic transactions to take place. And if you're committing fraud, you will normally need a first-person bank account on where you transfer that money to. Like I say, I enjoy doing them now. I've done some fairly, what one would imply was fairly sophisticated frauds, but I got to the bottom of them, and they've whilst police are reluctant these days early on to get involved in fraud investigations because of how time-consuming they are. The fraud investigations I've done have thankfully, survived the threshold of proof that it's been required in a criminal jurisdiction, where I've supported the police and enabled them to be able to spend the necessary time to go and knock on the door, interview the suspect, and that type of thing. It's not too hard to get up to that threshold of proof beyond reasonable doubt at the moment, I think, with fraud investigations. Is there anyone thinking about doing a fraud? You need your head read, particularly if you're using a first-person bank account, if you've got a mobile phone, if you're using a sophisticated accounting system in your company. They'll find you. They'll find you.
Well, to sum up what you just said, this one had 10,000 documents, Jason, to wade through.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of documents to get your head around. And we want the police addressing domestic violence. We want them addressing terrorism. We want them addressing drunk driving, pedophiles. We don't, the company has to have its risk management and governance in place to stop the frauds and to be aware of the frauds. That's where we come in, and that's our role. The police will run with it once they get that brief, or they get an idea that it's going somewhere. But yeah, if it's minor, well, risk management can prevent that sort of thing.
Yeah, now, but be ready to catalogue your exhibits, have all them ready. Make sure that you have continuity of each of those exhibits through the statements that you obtain from your people, and that type of thing. So, yeah, you're quite right, because they are very, very time-consuming, and every moment of time that the police spend investigating frauds is a moment of time when they are protecting the community, and
right.
for these more serious things like sexual assaults, murders, those types of things.
Speaking of regulators, now this one's drawn the interest of Channel 7. Now, if you want to draw the interest of Channel 7 at any time, you just say the word private investigator, because it doesn't matter what TV channel it is or what what newspaper, just say private investigator. So today, current affairs have come out with this one. They've said that Brett Sutcliffe, who owns Spouse Busters, has gone and done unauthorised surveillance and charged the lady $5,500 for that unauthorised surveillance. Now, it was on a current affair last night. Now, she said, well, I only rang up and inquired and this, that and the other, and then they hit me $5,500 for this unauthorised surveillance, which I haven't got, and they've threatened to repossess my invalid mum and dad's Subaru to pay for it. So this lady, she's been in contact with them. Now, Brett Sutcliffe lost his licence a couple of years ago for pretending to be a police officer or a federal police officer or something. Here's a little bit of current affair last night.
Ghostbusters company director.
I've got a camera right there.
Sutcliffe appeared on our show more than a decade ago, revealing the art of catching cheaters.
This is a favourite by some of our female operatives. It's obviously a handbag camera.
But this was before Sutcliffe was convicted for impersonating an AFP officer. His security licence was torn up, but he continues to be a director of Spouse Busters. Did Mr. Sutcliffe tell you to...
Now, we discussed this last week in relation to another matter. For licensing in New South Wales, for an individual who isn't licensed to present themselves as a licensed person, it's a $50,000 fine if they are charged by the New South Wales Licensing Authority. That's maximum. The corporation will be up for $100,000. Now, all Brett Sutcliffe's competitors are going to be screaming because it's a real bun fight in the world of surveillance on marital and relationship, and a lot of people make their living out of it, and who cares? I don't, but I don't want to know about it. But they will be screaming, take away his licence, he hasn't got, take away his company's licence, fine him $50,000, fine his company $100,000. Well, there's no evidence that Brett had any thing to do with it. There's some allegations in that news article. We'll have to ask a current affair, Brett, and the regulator about that one. I know nothing about it, but it guarantees a headline every time you see private investment in relation to that sort of thing. So will the regulator do anything about it in New South Wales in the current environment? I don't think so. I think they're pretty well tied up with hotel quarantine and stuff like that. And they'll look at this one and go, no, that's too expensive. That's going to be too hard. We'll let that slide. We've got other priorities. That's my thinking. But just depends how far current affair want to go with that one and how much support they want to throw behind it. They've got the attention. Whether things change now and the lady gets the outcome she wants without having to pay that unauthorised surveillance bill, I don't know. But as a private investigator, I always have a contract with anyone I do surveillance or any kind of investigation for. I always have a contract. I always have an understanding of what the price estimates will be. There's no surprises when it comes into that sort of thing. And I can't imagine a firm like Spouse Busters not having that. They've been around forever. That seems strange to me. If it's true, then it must be very tough times in marital and relationship when everybody's during the pandemic. I don't know. So
surveillance, Mike. Surveillance is a very, very sensitive issue. I know in New South Wales, and I mean even from a workplace surveillance perspective, circumstances came up this week where I was having a discussion with someone, and they were talking about how they had, in a workplace, they had video surveillance and they also had audio surveillance as well. Now, there is workplace surveillance legislation that exists in New South Wales, and any notion that you believe that you can just switch that equipment on and start monitoring employees in the workplace and even others in the workplace, and that is crazy. There are some legalities. over the years in that I've done quite a few covert surveillance in the workplace, where I've actually had to go and apply to a magistrate for a covert surveillance authority. And then it is no different to how I used to have to prosecute search warrant applications to search a suspect's house. They're difficult to get. You need to make sure that you have sufficient enough evidence to be able to support it, and also some justification to say that you cannot get that evidence any other way. So yeah, surveillance is a sensitive matter. It's a sensitive matter out there amongst the community. There's no doubt about it. And I think people have the right to know if someone is looking at them, if someone is recording them from an audio perspective. And the way the social media works these days, and that I just don't know how much of that is going to continue to be tolerated, where people are being not only recorded via video, but also being recorded via audio, and how the dynamic of that is going to work across the different jurisdictions as well.
That's right, and the value in that different jurisdiction with its different application. There is case law, and we'll discuss that further down the track. But you're spot on there, mate. I thoroughly agree with you. Now, just have a look as quickly at some of the positions vacant. This is a beauty down in Hobart. So, Senior Complaint Assessment Investigation Officer for local government, working for like a local government authority. So you're outside local government. You're working like for the Premier's Department, monitoring complaints against local government. Now, places that are going to draw complaints are local government. That involves developers, it involves politicians, local government politicians, and all sorts of things. It's a minefield for complaints, and people have to pay their rates, and they're happy to complain. So that's a really great compliance and risk management job available down in Hobart. So if you're in Tassie and you've got qualifications in that field, that's a really great opportunity. They're paying up to $106,375 per annum. So not bad money. It's a pretty good job. Hobart, excellent lifestyle, lovely place to live. There is the Melbourne Racing Club, are after a risk manager down in Melbourne. So this is one of the biggest racing clubs in Australia. So they're after a safety officer, risk and safety officer. So really great opportunity down there. You can see that one. All these jobs are on Seek, so you can see them there. This is a beauty with Hollard Insurance. They want a senior risk manager for general insurance. So if you're not familiar with general insurance, it's your home and contents, it's your motor vehicle if it's stolen, your house if it burns down, visitors to your house. If your dog bites someone, you're covered by that. So this is an internal role within an insurance company looking at risk in the future. Again, that's the same one, sorry. Outdoors security risk, outdoors risk and compliance manager for Outdoors Incorporated. So this is going to be for people who must be going out into the field to do some of their work or that sort of thing. We had an interesting case just last year where we had an organisation do some bush and rural life-saving exercises, and these involve cold water rescues and stuff like that. So all the people that were involved in this had all the equipment, they had all the inductions, they had everything done. They were absolutely prepared. In the middle of winter, they were rafting down these freezing cold rivers in Tasmania that were in full flood. So they were using the time to really practice their rescues and stuff like that. And they all had to wear dry suits to stay warm, because naturally this is freezing cold water. If you fell into it in your clothes out of your rubber raft, you would freeze, your hypothermia, you'd be dead within 10 minutes practically. So they were doing this exercise outdoors. And one poor bloke, his dry suit had a leak in it, and it was quite a large leak, and the exercise actually turned real because he got hypothermia, and they had to get him rescue helicopters and everything. So if you're going to be one of these risk managers and you're doing that sort of thing, the exercises are just as important as the real thing, people. And the Royal Melbourne Institute University, they're after Senior Manager Government Risk and Compliance. You're going to see university roles everywhere, and you're thinking to yourself, well, where are all the students? They will be coming back. They're planning that. So Australia is a safe haven for a student to be sent to by their parents. They use Australia because they don't want their children at the age of 17, 18 going into compulsorily into the army. So left my phone on. That was great. So that's why they send them overseas to study, and eventually they can get residency in Australia. So
those positions too, Michael, those positions, those risk manager positions in universities at the moment are most relevant as well, given that I would expect there is going to be a need to have increased scrutiny when it comes to access control, when it comes to entry, when it comes to qualifying for entry, those types of things. And we know that, the security industry across the board has had its workload increased by at least 30% this year, just given the amount of legislation they have to navigate and supervise people for, and people's access and egress, and the way that's been working, and the role that security have had in supervising that as well. So, yeah, I'm not surprised. Universities are going very strong on risk management, given their heavy reliance on international participants.
Yep, my word. And it is, like I say, it is Australia's third biggest industry. So it's a very valuable one, not just to the university, but to Australia as a whole. And the risk management on campus, or whether it's professors teaching overseas, wherever they might be, that's our global world we do now. If they're in, I don't know, Paraguay, and there's a riot and the government is changing, you've got to get your professor out of wherever that's happening and get them back to safely. You have a duty of care for that. So it's not just RMIT, it's wherever it extends itself. If it's got a program on in Antarctica for whatever reason, I don't know, and they need to get people out because they're running out of supplies, or they were iced in or whatever, that's going to be an issue for the universe. That's an imaginary scenario, but that's going to be an issue. It's been
health is going to be the number one risk for all risk managers to be considering in 2021. There's absolutely no doubt about it. I've got no doubt there'll be decisions made about whether or not someone's eligibility for entry into a workplace, eligibility for entry into a university, eligibility for entry into the country, eligibility for entry onto an aeroplane will be determined about a vaccine, and whether or not someone's had a vaccine, and then how we're going to go about databasing those people that have had the vaccine, etc. So, in addition to those more traditional risks that we're looking at pre-2020, 2021 looks like a whole different space altogether. It's going to be a busy year. I can see it. It's going to be a busy year.
And from our perspective, Jason, it's challenge accepted, and we're looking forward to that. Yeah. And we'll roll up our sleeves and be very much a part of that. Thanks for coming in today, mate. I'll see you again next week. Stick around. I've just got something to tell you, and we'll go out now. And thanks for watching, people. This is No Risk. We've got some big news next week coming up, but I'll just tell that to Jason now. We'll just go out with our music. We'll just go out with our